como la miel y sabes que no la mereces. Hoy tengo que hacerte mi mujer y lo sé muy bien. Ven, vamos a acercarnos pa' ver cómo es esto de rozarnos piel con piel. Hoy quiero que te sientas mi mujer una y otra vez. Tu piel es dulce como la miel y sabes que no la mereces. Hoy tengo que hacerte mi mujer y lo sé muy bien. Lo sé muy bien, bebé. Real man, esto es para ti, él no te merece. Hoy hacemos el pacto, vete, vamos a hacer un contrato donde solo figure buen trato. Es puro sentimiento, con todo lo que digo no miento. Te quiero dejar en lo más alto y no me jacto. Baby, te enseño a bailar lento, muy lento, bebé. Toda la noche y de esto no me arrepiento. Si él quiere algo estaré para el intento. Tú eres mía hasta mañana, lo siento. Ven, vamos a acercarnos pa' ver cómo es esto de rozarnos piel con piel. Hoy quiero que te sientas mi mujer una y otra vez.
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
Well, we're back, and we got a great guest tonight, Earl Grey. We're talking about UFOs, Mufon, and I think he has a great story here that his mom encountered with different agencies, Howard Hughes, and all this stuff. Also, we're going to take one or two phone calls about 15 to 20 minutes after the hour, and that number is 1-253-203-6681. That's 1-253-203-6681. Earl, are you still here?
Yes, hi there, Gary.
Well, you know,
can you hear me?
I hear you fine. Can you still hear me?
Great.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
We're not doing that Sprint commercial. I had that happen to me about 2 weeks ago. I didn't realize the guest was very hard of hearing. He had 2 earphones on, and I'll tell you what, he couldn't hear me. I couldn't hear him. So, what can I say?
Dead air. That's what you don't want.
Yeah, it was like
dead air.
Yeah, no, it wasn't dead air. It was like every 30 seconds. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me now? I can't hear you. Okay, that reminded me of that old, Sprint commercial from years ago.
I'll tell you, the one piece of music that you'll never hear on the radio is John Cage's Concerto for Silence.
Oh yeah,
and that is a thing. But he would sit at the piano and they would begin, and he had somebody to turn the page of sheet music for him at a given point, But he would just stand there with his hands over the piano, and it was about 5 minutes of perfect silence. I think there's probably a recording of it.
Or not.
You might as well not buy it. You have it without the recording.
Oh, yeah. But yeah,
I was going to say, you're an Anderson, too, and that's actually my last name. Earl Grey, believe it or not, is a pseudonym. The Earl part is real. But I'm a musician, and for, back in the 1980s, I was playing, playing the fields of Los Angeles, one of the many musicians. And I played one club where they had another gentleman by the name of Carl Anderson. He was an R&B singer. He's the guy who played Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, wow.
And we had one problem one night because on the marquee, the guy put Carl Anderson for my show, and he accidentally put Earl Anderson for Carl's show. And at that point, it was kind of like, well, I need to change my name.
Well, yeah, that's quite common, both in, actors, what you did, even in broadcasting. Yeah. I used to go under by Rick Stevens, plus a bunch of other names, depending on some of the radio stations I worked for. They said, no, you're not going to go by Rick Stevens. You're not going to go by Gary Anderson. You're going to be you're Michael O'Hara. I am? Oh yeah, you're Michael O'Hara. Okay, well, I'm Michael. Okay, that's fine. Then halfway, the first week doing the show, you forget who your name is and you start calling yourself something else. It could get rather interesting. Now, going back to the Reagan days, when he mentioned out there, it didn't hit me because I was still young and naive, you know. And then when I got older, I started realizing we weren't talking about the Soviet Union at the time nuking, you know, Washington, D.C. or Seattle or Los Angeles. He was talking about something out there, but he wouldn't go any farther than that. And
it's a huge thing.
Well,
what he told you.
Yeah,
oh my
but
God, that's huge.
It didn't, you know, sink in. But, you know, Reagan was rather good at that. You know, he would say, I remember one time he was on CBS and he was doing a little news thing and he didn't realize the microphone was on. And he jokingly said, well, we're going to nuke Russia.
Yeah, the missiles are on the way. That was the quote.
yeah. Could you imagine could you imagine if they took that wrong?
Oh, but he was interested, and he knew that the phenomena was real. I mean, apparently he saw a UFO while he was governor, and he went up to the pilot, and he told the pilot they were going to assess that. He said, "Do you see that?" And the pilot did, and he said, "Well, take chase after it." And they actually chased a UFO, is the way the story goes. And apparently he had another encounter where, Shirley MacLaine talked about it, so you can take it with a grain of salt or a big, giant grain of salt if you want to, if you like Shirley MacLaine. But she claimed that he and Nancy were on their way to a party and that they actually saw a craft land on the road in front of them, that somebody got out, and he had a little conversation with the guy. And he said that you're going to be president of the United States someday. And that, you know, according to Shirley MacLaine, that's a real thing that happened, and she got the story from Ronald Reagan. I can't prove that was Ronald Reagan's story and not Shirley MacLaine, but it certainly would explain a lot of things. He did give that one talk in front of Congress where he said that if imagine what would happen if there was suddenly a threat from outer space, that we would drop all of our nationalisms around the world and we would work together, you know, to fight this off. And you know, some people thought that it was just an allegory, but many of us believe that no, he was actually very serious and he was telling us a real world scenario that could happen. So, yes.
Yeah, and
your story is a wonderful story.
Yeah, and you know, Shirley MacLaine, I hate to say it, used to be a customer in the store in Tacoma. I used to be the general manager. We were the oldest camera store in Tacoma. She didn't live that far away from Tacoma. And ever so often for any camera, because she was into cameras at one point, she would come and see us. Now, I have to admit, she was a little bit out there. Well,
she's a little woo-woo, but
yeah, a little.
She believes in UFOs.
She did.
She believes in this stuff, you know.
Oh yeah.
Of course, for Shirley, it's all a positive, and I'm not sure if that's the way it actually is. I'm going to stick to my guns that it's right in the middle. It's like us, you know. Are humans good? Are humans malevolent? Well, we're somewhere in the middle. You know, it depends on the human that you meet.
Well,
you know?
Earl, I got in trouble a couple months ago when I said this, what I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, we eat virtually everything, don't we? I mean, I mean, everything from insects to whatever. The humans will eat it, unless it's poison, okay? Now, look at a civilization, maybe 20,000 years, 50,000, 100,000 years, or even more advanced than we are. What would they maybe look at us as? You know, they might look at us as that farm, which I said earlier, that maybe there is some species out there that look at human and is no more than we look at that Big Mac or sorry, McDonald's. But I mean, you know, you don't know that because what concerns me is the amount of people that go missing. You know, we have the author
David Politis.
Yes,
missing
out of the national forest system. It's a huge number. But then I took it farther by looking how many people are reported missing, getting up to go to work and never show up to work, or go on a road trip, or go to the store and never show up. And there's tens of thousands of people missing with no trace at all. And I'm wondering sometimes, where are they going? They can't be that many serial killers around.
people disappear, and I think that you pose a. I mean, it's a valid question, and I mean that may be part of the reason why disclosure, quote unquote, hasn't happened yet as well. I personally believe that there are benevolence and there are malevolence out there, and you have to be careful. And you have to be careful about opening yourself up to aliens, entities of any sort. Now, there are plenty of people that open themselves up to aliens and channel them, and I think that some of that is very valid. That they do seem to communicate through ESP, but can you always believe who's talking to you? I don't know that. I don't know that for sure. So I think that you have to use caution. You have to remember in the back of your mind that it's perhaps not all Reese's Pieces. Our government certainly doesn't think that, or I think they would have come to the fore and told us that we were being contacted 70 years ago. They have not done that.
I don't think they would. Do you remember Orson Welles, The War of the Worlds? Now, I think that was broadcast on CBS. I could be totally wrong, but people were listening to another famous show at the same time. But during it like the break, they would switch over to to see what the other network had. And there was a lot of people who didn't catch the first part of the broadcast where it said, this is a radio play. It's basically all make-believe. It's not real, where he tells that, right? People,
it did scare people.
It
did scare people.
It scared people where there was a farmer, for example, in the Midwest. It actually killed his whole family, thinking it was going to be, and himself, that it would be better than having the aliens doing what they were doing. People went crazy. And even here in my own state, in Concrete, Washington, at the same time that show started broadcasting, they lost their power. The transformer blew that covered Carnation, Washington. All of a sudden, they had lost all their power when they heard this invasion was going on with these aliens. Could you imagine being in a small community? And all of a sudden, you're hearing that the world is being invaded by these aliens, and they're ravaging and killing and doing all this stuff, right? And then your power goes out. And I'm talking to some of the people that live there, remember that from their grandparents and stuff like that. They've got their guns out. They were ready to shoot anything. It didn't look normal.
Yeah. Well, I believe that they have been doing disclosure, and that what we're doing right now is active disclosure. We haven't been taken off the air yet tonight. Here we are still talking about this, And, so, I haven't had guys in black suits show up at my door. So it's the drip method, I think. And I think that that's more reasonable, and I think that people have been acclimatized to the idea for a long, long time. I think that there are people in government, in the Department of Defense, who are ready to actually bring the information forward. Just the fact that the Nimitz affair in 2004 is you have to realize